Everyone. It is September 20th, 2023. This is a full committee meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. Next slide, please. Let's get started with introductions. So, Pastor Weisner, you want to start us off?
Welcome, everyone. I am Pastor Robin Weisner, co-chair with the lovely Celeste of the full committee, as well as the chair of the Settlement and Policy. I do welcome everyone, and I'll throw it over to Celeste.
Good evening, all. Thank you for attending. Celeste Carey, PCCEP co-chair. And let's see, I heard mention of Byron. It is now on you, Byron. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Having a little technical difficulties. Thank you, Celeste, Pastor Weisner, Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member. I don't want to raise my hand. Nathan?
You there, Nathan?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. Nathan Castle, he, him pronouns, PCCEP member. Apologies for the issue, and I'll pass it to Leslie Martinez.
Oh, hi. Good evening, everyone. Leslie Martinez, PCCEP member now for officially 1 year. And my pronouns are she, her. And I think that's all the info. So thank you, everyone.
Great. And I think that's everyone here from PCCEP tonight. So a note on that, we are in that fun time between our outgoing members finishing their terms and waiting for appointments next week. And we also have 2 people out sick tonight. So we are operating with a skeleton crew, but we're going to do our best and still have a great meeting tonight. But it is just those PCCEP folks with us for now. Okay, so now we can hear introductions from city staff. Anyone here from the DOJ and PPB, please introduce yourselves at this time as well. And I'll start. I'm Dory Grabinski, PCCEP project manager, and everyone else just jump in.
Hi, folks. Stephanie Howard from the mayor's office. Oh, my camera is being goofy, but good to see you all.
Hi there. I'm Jeff Bell from the Portland Police Bureau. Glad to be here tonight.
Good evening, Mary Claire Buckley, also from the Portland Police Bureau.
Good evening, Avi Klepper, PCCEP staff.
Hi there, Jared Hager with the U.S. Department of Justice from Washington, D.C. tonight. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, thank you, everyone.
Teresa Leon, one of the consultants.
And Frida Davis, another consultant facilitator.
All right. And I think next we have community agreements. Nathan, would you like to read these for us?
Sure thing. Can you still hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. Community agreements. Listen actively and respectfully. Share airtime. Be present and open to new information and perspectives. Assume positive intent. Respect each other. Respect the group. Speak your own truth. Communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully. Ask questions to clarify. Call out bias. And be okay with ambiguity.
All right. And we just added a slide about discussion guidelines. This is just a reminder about how we've always been operating, but just something to refer back to about sharing airtime, some of those community agreements we just went over, and then also our protocols for raising hand on Zoom. The main takeaway there being, even if there is back and forth in a conversation, that we do ask that you raise your hand each and every time that you speak. Okay, and now let's move ahead to an overview of today's meeting. I'm going to take this one since we are down a few members that we were expecting tonight who were going to lead the 725 discussion. So we may or may not kind of get into that as fully as we were planning to. We'll kind of see how it goes, but we do have a really packed update section for you tonight. So we may spend a little more time there, which is great. We may have a little more time to unpack some of that. And then we'll kind of briefly talk about PCCEP codification. Okay, and with that, let's just move into everything. And next slide. So as people may have heard, today we learned that Chief Chuck Lavelle is stepping down as Chief of Police. I don't know if PCCEP members have any more to comment on this section, just a quick update that we did want to share on this.
I just wanted to say that the great work and great appreciation to Chief Chuck Lavelle for navigating through difficult times when he stepped into that role. We greatly appreciate his service and all that he has done as a longtime PPB employee. As we've heard, he has been very connected in our community, the African American especially, but we do appreciate him and looking forward. And I also want to say on the personal note that, you know, looking through a replacement, Bob Day, I have a great respect for and has worked with him as well as we've heard his language of how he is very committed to seeing a better Portland. And I really thank him for in his place there. His role, I should say, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Pastor Wisner. Any other comments from PCCEP members or questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Byron.
Yeah, for some reason my mouse wants to shake a lot while I'm moving it, so I have to be really. But yes, I want to piggyback on what Pastor Weisner said. I hadn't really got a chance to meet Chuck Lavelle. I got to meet him. Thought he was a great person. I wish all the best for him. I hopefully I'm lucky enough to work with him later on down the road if that's possible. I just wish this. I know these are times that are very trying, to say the least. And I give him a pass on anything that he wasn't able to accomplish because he tried his best and he did what he could. He worked with what he could work with. So I appreciate your work, Mr. Chuck Lavelle.
Thanks, Byron. Okay, so our next update. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one more thing. And just to confirm, Chuck Lavelle is not leaving the police department, right? He's just stepping down and taking over a different aspect or doing more of the community engagement piece.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, and he has a very strong background of community engagement. So it really does identify to his strength.
Yeah, as Stephanie Howard noted in the chat, I think in particular for PCCEP, there probably will be plenty of working opportunities moving forward since Chief Lavelle will be moving into focusing even more on community engagement.
You kind of read my mind there. I just wanted to confirm that for future bookmark.
Nice. All right. Okay. we've been saying this, but we have 5 new members coming on board in exactly 1 week. We do have that appointment scheduled now for 9:45 a.m. If any PCEP members or members of the public are interested in observing or showing support to our new members. We have a couple of events scheduled to onboard and welcome these new folks as well. This is mainly for our PCEP members to note. And of course, you are welcome to and encouraged to participate in those, and more information to come. Any questions here? Alrighty. Moving on. So I'm going to turn it over now to our full committee co-chairs, Pastor Weisner and Celeste, to share this update about a recent meeting they had.
Thank you, Dory. Well, we want to thank Mayor Wheeler for arranging a meeting with Aaron Schmutz, who is a sergeant with the Police Bureau and the current chair of the PPA, which is the police union. And it was a good meeting in that we got a chance to meet each other in an official capacity as PCEP chairs and hear what kinds of visions and goals they would have for us working together. And it was, long story short, Aaron's looking forward to this opportunity for us to get a chance to know each other, to understand not only deeper workings of the Police Bureau, but the perspective and workings of the union with regard to some of the challenges we've had with police accountability and the adoption of some resolutions and measures coming out of public engagement as well as city council. So we're really excited that this is going to mark the beginning of a chance to sit down and talk and then move forward toward some truth and reconciliation. It was a very agreeable conversation. And when I say agreeable, I don't mean to say that we danced around any issues. We were pretty blunt, but you know, it's respectful. It's the desire to have an open, honest dialogue, and to explain that while we can have an amicable conversation, when you are public facing and you have people from the public expressing frustration and using language that may be raw or may seem hostile or may even be have profanity, recognize that a lot of that can be coming from hurt and feeling of being dismissed and confusion, and that it is not necessarily a total disregard of police and the value of them for the community, but it's an expression of any natural feelings that come from a conversation that is one-sided and doesn't feel open to both parties. We also talked about the opportunities to work with the police union for future recommendations coming from both PCEP and to get an understanding of how directives from city governance are adopted and pass the union's muster. And then finally, they've also agreed to start attending future meetings, public meetings with PCEP. And we think that is a big step forward because it gives us all a chance to talk to each other, get to know each other, become familiar with each other's needs and processes. Anything else you want to add, Pastor Weisner?
Celeste, as wonderful as you are in summarizing and taking notes and being very very in the point of what the meeting was. And even in the meeting, my hands applauds her because, as she has stated, there was no kid gloves off. It was really right there respectfully. But the only thing that I would add in areas of what I took from the meeting is that collaboration of wanting to recognize the difference from the past and going forward into where we want to be and understand how we can all be able to agree to disagree, but strongly hear strongly from the community, strongly hear relationships where people will know the directions and the things that they're telling. I applaud Mayor Wheeler for, again, putting, and Stephanie Howard for helping us to form that meeting and this because, again, the takeaway I got from the meeting as what we are here at the table and volunteering and doing the work that we do to make everything accountable. I didn't see anyone gleaming from what that looks like. I think that this is a great start for where we are as PCCEP. I have to give all of our committee members a great shout out because we represent what you actually want us to be able to say in those meetings to the mayor as well as to the president union, and just appreciate all of the efforts of saying how we can do this job and respectfully. The words that I did take and love was healing and transparency and truth and reconciliation.
I'd also ask Stephanie, is there anything you wanted to share from your perspective in this meeting that maybe we missed that is important?
No, I think that covered it. I just really want to appreciate both of you for asking the hard questions and for being open to to building a relationship. And I think there's a real opportunity here to create some meaningful engagement among all of us that I think will serve us all really well. So I felt very positively, and we're more than happy always to do anything we can to connect you with people you would like to be connected with.
Thank you. And thank you, Dory.
Most definitely, Dory. I do want to applaud you too.
Looks like Byron has a comment.
I want to say thank you, Celeste, Pastor Weisner, Stephanie, Dory. Wow. Celeste, I don't know what to say. So they both were sitting down there and they were agreeing. And they were really down. It was like, this is what we want to do. And
yes. And I know for those who have been here a while, I have a reputation for asking that hard question. And I asked. And so I did not sugarcoat the need for engagement and empathy from the police to the community. I brought that full package to them, but as I do, amicably, because this is what we need. And we need them not to be afraid or not to bristle, or to feel it dismissed. But we also want them not to do that to us. And so we're building that good community relationship, brick by brick, and expecting it to be a durable, ongoing thing. So I promise keep you all updated.
Byron,
As you give us information, it will be taken to, leadership.
Byron, could you clarify your question when they asked for what? What do you mean by that? Because I just want to make sure we're communicating clearly and accurately.
Oh no, it wasn't nothing I was asking for. I was just.
Oh no, I'm just saying when you said like they both agreed to. I just want to make. I'm not sure I understood the question.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, agreeing. They were in complete everybody understood everybody was agreeing to what Celeste was saying. There wasn't no pushback. They were understanding that this was coming. They understood that this was something that is also that is needed between the both of us. The understanding. So that's why I'm like, really? They said that? Okay.
Okay, that's what I thought you were saying. And if I could kind of build on sort of what's been shared, my perspective was that there was a mutual understanding that there's a need for much better communication between the community, the police, the decision makers, the union, and that there is no way to have constructive dialogue around these issues. In terms of like, was there straightforward agreement about harm done or the need for truth and reconciliation, for example? I did not hear things that way. I think there are different perspectives when it comes to those sorts of things, but there was certainly agreement around the fact that there needs to be more constructive dialogue and better ways to come to solutions that work for everybody. So I just wanted to be clear about sort of, from my perspective, what I heard being said on both sides, as sort of more of an observer of the meeting.
Dory, can I just interject real quick? I get what you're saying, and I'm not expecting roses. Celeste didn't. Pastor Wisner went in there and hit a strike on the, at the bowling alley, and I can't be more prouder than him. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Celeste?
And to kind of fill in a little bit more, because thank you, Dory, for digging and getting a little bit of clarity. There is still some work to be done. We need to establish a common vocabulary so that when we talk in terms of recognizing harm done, that everybody knows what we mean, because we don't want there to be any confusion that maybe the apologies that made were adequate. We don't want there to be any confusion made when we say that people still feel raw or maybe suspicious and are longing for truth and honesty and empathy. So we're still in the first stages. I don't want it to seem like we got everything there. So I would pull back. I won't say we hit a strike. I won't say we hit a home run, but I will definitely say we're on first base.
And if I would add anything to Celeste's excellent points are historically bringing them to the community to have these honest dialogue with the new direction of this new leadership of this young president does recognize that there is work needing to be built forward. And I felt that he was strongly in his leadership role, wanting to be able to begin that work. And we guarantee, I guess we could say the word guarantee, but we reassured him that this is the best place and a safe place where that it is respectful and that people who actually may have the trauma, that we are working toward a community of healing. And I believe that that was received enough to say that the work, that if it's a home run or a strike, but I have to agree with Celeste, it is just a step because we have new changes coming. And with new changes, of course, there's a lot of things that is without our control. But let us be proud of this moment of being able to bring them to the table and hear such a great work that these volunteers have committed to in moving, healing, and the settlement agreement work in the settlement agreement, as well as community to have that dialogue with them in an open, honest dialogue and connection. I'll park there. But that's the applaud to this whole team, because this whole team, I'm just proud of PCCEP. I am very much. I hear it everywhere I go, how remarkable this group has done and continues to do these community engagements and open forums to where people are comfortable with the direction we're going in.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pastor Weisner. Okay, so I think we can wrap up this update, and speaking of volunteers, get to our next one. So we wanted to let you know that there is something happening tomorrow at City Council. Another volunteer board that works on policing, the Police Accountability Commission, is presenting their final report, a code package, to City Council. And I think we have a slide about their work, and we've also invited some of their staff and members here tonight, and they're going to share a little bit about what they have worked on with our members and attendees here tonight. But first of all, for those who are not familiar with the Police Accountability Commission, we included this slide here to help you understand a little bit more about what they're going to talk about in a minute. So it might actually be easier to read the right side of the slide first. So back in 2020, there was something called the Real Police Accountability Measure on the ballot. And so it was passed, and it has all of these provisions in it. And the ballot also created, go to the left side, the Police Accountability Commission, which is a commission or board of 20 volunteers that is supposed to kind of fill in the gaps around this charter, the information on the right. So this group of 20 volunteers, they've basically been working for the past 2 years or so to kind of propose all of the details of this new system. They are not the board. They have are proposing what the future board will be. So they're kind of a commission creating the details of a future board, which is sort of a confusing system to wrap your mind around, but that's why we're kind of laying it out here for you. With that said, my attempt to explain that, I'm gonna pass it over to our attendees with us from the Police Accountability Commission. I believe Samir Kanal is here and a couple of their members as well. So we'll hand it over to you guys.
Thank you, Dory. For those I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Samir Kanal. I am the Advisory Boards and Commissions Manager for the Community Safety Division, and I'm also the Project Manager for the Police Accountability Commission. I'm joined by a few of the members here today. I'm going to give a very quick overview of the proposal that the PAC will be presenting tomorrow at City Council. And then I'll open up the floor so that there can be PCCEP discussion and Q&A, and in much of that, I imagine several of the questions that you may have may be best answered by the members of the PAC who are here today, including Dan Handelman, I see here, as well as Debbie Iona, and I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone else. Apologies if so. But yeah, the sort of summary overview of the work of the PAC is going to be on this slide. So I'm just going to share screen real quick.
Samir,
yes.
If any other of the PAC members are here, could you just do an emoji, raise your hand so we can see if we missed you?
Thank you. not seeing anyone else yet. Okay. Well, this are the sort of overview, and I'm not sure, can you enable screen sharing real quick? It's just 2 slides.
I'm not the host of the meeting, so our host will have to make you a co-host, please.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So the very, very broad strokes overview of what the PAC is proposing, and which will be presented tomorrow, is a new community board for police accountability, which is the oversight board that was approved by the voters in November 2020, which will oversee a staff entity called the Office for Community-Based Police Accountability, which is a bureau of city government. That staff is led by a bureau director who can hire intake staff, investigators, administrative staff, and the other staff necessary to do the work of the oversight system. And in terms of what it can do, 5 basic things that kind of cover a lot of different options here. There'd be mandatory things that are investigated, as well as any complaint alleging police misconduct that affects a member of the public. Panels of the board would independently determine findings and, if needed, corrective action or discipline to impose. These are employment-based discipline that's not related to either civil lawsuits or criminal charges against officers. Those are different processes. And they'd be making those decisions based on the results of files prepared by staff investigators. The new board also has the ability to make policy recommendations which reflect community concerns, and those go to the police chief. And if necessary, they would also go to city council. Transparent reporting of data, balanced with confidentiality for personal information. So the PAC approached a lot of these, what should be open to the public with an answer of as open as possible, while still protecting personally identifying information. And finally, meetings, which is to say most of the work of the public work of the new board would be open to the public, and hearings, which are those the actions of the panels where they consider the individual case, will be open to the public when in compliance with state law to do so. There's some specifics in there. That is a very broad strokes overview of what the PAC is proposing. There's tons of information in the 500+ page report that they put out. But for the interest of respecting PCCEP's time, we're just going to only present this much information and ask if you have questions. I'm sure either commission members, Dan and Debbie, or myself would be happy to answer any of those. Thank you.
Any questions for PAC staff or members, or anything that the PAC members would like to add? Oh, go ahead, Leslie.
Yeah, I just have a question, especially with the corrective action. That is something that is particularly, like we've talked a lot about how that all works, and it looks amazing. I agree with the comment in the chat. I'm wondering, has PPA looked at this? I know that a lot of times when we propose things like this, they sound great and then they hit a wall. A lot of times there. So yeah, wanted to just ask how you're anticipating addressing that, and has that been talked about? I'm sure it has, but wanted to ask there.
Yeah, Dan, I saw you turn on your camera. Would you like to answer that question? You're muted.
Yeah, I'll mute Dan.
Yeah, I was acknowledging that I'm here, but really, I came here as a member of Portland Cop Watch, but I will speak as a former member of the commission. We're not technically members anymore. On September 1st, our term ended. So, but the agreement the settlement agreement and the ballot measure and charter itself say that this can be instituted only when it's been negotiated with the police association. So, but there are things that are written in the charter, which is the city's constitution, that basically say this board hires their director, this board investigates deadly force and other kinds of misconduct cases, and this board imposes discipline. And so those are, what's written in the charter. So I think they're the things that are negotiable are things that are a little bit more in the granular areas.
Yeah, thank you for that. I just wanted to see how that, whether it aligns or conflicts with the bargaining agreement. And I know that part of it is like, it's going to be up for negotiation next year, I believe, right? So I don't know if there's certain things to think about, but yeah. Thanks for that insight.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Leslie. Stephanie?
I'm thinking I don't know why my camera won't work. Apologies for that. I'm thinking it might be helpful to kind of give a little bit of information about where this is procedurally so that people understand the different inflection points and different decision points for this. So for tomorrow, the PAC is presenting all their work and their recommendations, and it's a tremendous amount of work. So they are presenting that to City Council, and Council will vote whether to accept receipt of their report, and then Council will have 60 days to review it, to propose code language that would then have to move through the DOJ process and the settlement agreement process. So the DOJ would have an opportunity to review and weigh in. It would need to go through the judge as well. And from there, whatever that final code looks like, that would ultimately, after those steps, be voted on for approval of the code by City Council. So this could take, it's not really clear. There aren't a lot of clear deadlines on that middle part. So it could take a while for all of those pieces to come together before there's, before this really comes into existence. But I think it's important just to note also in that sort of intervening part is where, if there are recommendations that council puts forward that implicate, bargaining obligations, that will cross that road if we get to it. So a bunch of moving pieces in that middle part, but for right now, where we are is just really, at the beginning of the procedural phase of all of the almost 2 years worth of work that these volunteers have done to put together this proposal.
Yeah,
thank you, Stephanie.
That's 100% accurate. And the only thing I'll just kind of emphasize there is that tomorrow's vote does not mean that council has made any decision whatsoever on the PAC's proposal other than to formally accept it. And so in November is the likely date, 60 days later, where content consideration by council will be made formally of any variety. But again, as Stephanie mentioned, that's not the final decision. That's just the first time.
Thank you, Samir. And I also noticed that you put something in the chat. Do you want to bring any attention to that? So what you dropped in the chat, Samir?
I was just putting the quote in that Dan was referring to from the charter section, and there's also a section in the settlement agreement that I'm going to put in the chat as well.
All right, thank you. Byron?
Thank you, Frida. Samira, I had just a quick question. On November, after the 60 days, will there be a place where we can sit down and hear the judgment, or will that just be something private where they'll just call you, I guess, or just tell you? I'm not sure.
Thank you, Byron. What I've been told most recently by Stephanie and other council staff is that there will be a city council resolution which formally sends the code package that they're proposing, which may have some differences with the PAC's proposal, as well as city proposed settlement agreement amendments to the DOJ and the court. That's the last best information I have, and Stephanie may be able to add more.
I can add a little bit more. So yeah, so yes, so in 60 days there will be that council action necessary to move whatever the council code package based on PAC recommendations, to move that into the DOJ settlement case. There would be a fairness hearing once that agreement is reached, and it would result in an amendment to the settlement agreement. So yes, I think there will be multiple opportunities, for community input, for community to speak at a fairness hearing about, whatever the ultimate code package may be. It may be exactly the same as what's before it. It may be different. We will know that as we dive in. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not,
And
then we.
to be clear, we can also take questions from community at this time as well. I forgot to announce that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara Boshinsky, Portland Cop Watch. Is there any basis on which the city council can be for or against it? I mean, are there guidelines for what types of reasons they can have for, say, opposing certain aspects of it? Do they have to justify their opinions, I guess?
I'll do my best to answer. I think the charter is the charter. That is the guiding document that gave rise to the Police Accountability Commission and was very specific in what the voters are, communicated they wanted to see in a new system. So I think that is the guiding document for the PAC's process as well as for council's process. I hope that helps. And the settlement agreement, of course.
Thank you. Jarrett?
Thank you. I just, wanted to give a little bit of perspective from the DOJ's side of things here. To Barbara Bochinsky's question, we are always interested in the rationale behind proposals, and the reason why the parties codified this new accountability structure in paragraph 195 of the settlement agreement in response to, as a new remedy in response to a notice of noncompliance, was to address accountability issues that we identified in our notice. And so we want to see an effective accountability structure, and whatever the city council decides to do, we're going to be interested in just the rationality of it. But that's also to say, I think we approach this with some deference to a process that we approved in having paragraph 195, which was the PAC, forming and developing recommendations that city council would then consider and propose to the Department of Justice. So, while the whole public, I think, will have many opportunities to be heard, whether at a fairness hearing, whether in a PCCEP meeting like this, or at city council, I think the hurdle for tweaks and changes to whatever city council proposes is much higher after it's proposed to us than it is on the front end. So to the extent you want your voice to have more impact, I'd say go convince your local elected representatives of what you want in here, because barring a conflict with effective accountability structures, I think we're going to be in a position to tinker with it, after it's before Judge Simon. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate all the hard work that went into this, and the presentation looks really great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jarrett. Dan?
So yeah, well, it's a little bit of my community activist hat, but you'll all notice if you go to the city council agenda and click on view testimony order that there's 43 people signed up right now to testify tomorrow. There are a lot of people who are interested in this topic. There's about 20 people who've sent in comments to city council as well. There's a thing where you can view written testimony, and out of those 20, the majority of them are in support of the PAC's proposal. including some community organizations. So I think one of the things that City Council probably is going to hear tomorrow is that there's a lot of support for the PAC's recommendations from the community. So I think that's an important aspect of what's going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Are there any other questions or comments?
Frida, I noticed a comment from Debbie Iona. Maybe she can expand.
Oh, I just wanted to, I think a lot of people are anxious to see this, get up and running, but, as you've heard, there are a lot of steps that need to happen. And then even after City Council adopts the final code, after the court has had its say and the DOJ, then it's my understanding it'll be 12 months before it's up and running. So we're looking off, 2 or 3 years from now before we actually see this in action. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Debbie. Stephanie said no more than 12 months. All right, at this time, can we go to the co-chairs? I believe that they had something they'd want to share. Go ahead, Co-Chair Weisner.
Yes, as a community leader, as well as a member of co-chairing the PCCEP, I have planned on speaking in the for favor of the work that they have done, and did see a lot of the support from the emails of PAC who will be in attendance. So I had proposed that we make a statement as well from PCCEP in support of the work that they had done, and wanted to bring that. Co-chair, would you have anything to add to what my recommendation and thought would be to the rest of the team?
I don't have a personal recommendation or addition. I just want to elevate the concerns that we have collected and aggregated in this document that speaks to what we hopefully will say speaks in behalf of the community. But I'll leave that to Dory when you're finished.
And I'm finished.
Meaning, what would you like me to do?
Well, just give the summary, of the document that we are going to speak in favor of the PAC on behalf of the community through the PCCEP. I probably just did that.
You want me to summarize?
Well,
well, may I?
I think I'll leave that to you two, because I will not be giving testimony. Yes, either of you, go right ahead.
Go right ahead, Pastor. I'm good.
Excellent. And what we're saying as volunteers, even here, the work that we have done at PCCEP, and many works that has been done through the settlement agreements of many volunteers, look at these recommendations and the hard work this community has came and put together. And as a community and a people who are ready for change, we see these proposals and recommendations and strongly ask the council, one, not to gut it, to accept the recommendations as there. And then secondly, to be able to understand that we all care about our city and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, accountability has a lot of uncomfortable places when it's looking at scrutinizing, if you can use that word. But that comes along with what we're trying to grow and have more trust with. The trust that I believe that we all are asking for in the work product that the PAC had put together. And that is the statement, again, that I strongly stand behind, and the work of the 30 years Celeste has done, the 30 years that I have done, that we demand more and we deserve more. So that's my statement as supporting from the areas of what I think it's the recommendations that to the council.
Thank you for summarizing that, Pastor Weisner. So I think the question that is being posed to fellow PCEP members here are sort of protocols and our bylaws, in fact, state that, you know, whenever a member is speaking on behalf of the PCEP, that we request your consent as a group. This isn't a formal vote. We're not voting on a formal statement to adopt or anything, but we, I think, are requesting your consent that your co-chairs can testify on this item as on behalf of PCEP. And so I guess we can just ask for a display of support for that action with a show of hands.
And any questions or comments, if anyone has a question or would like to add more.
Well, sounds like we have consensus from the people here. So yeah, and any questions or comments before we move on? Or anything else you'd like your co-chairs to consider when they speak on this? Oh, Leslie, did you have something? Oh, okay. Okay, I think we're good to go on that. So thanks, everybody. All right, moving right along. I'm wondering, how is everyone feeling? Would you like to take the 5-minute break now or just move into this?
I'm good to go. Good to go. Let's check with Celeste and see what Celeste thinks.
We're doing fine, and you actually just covered what I wanted you to say about the speaking on behalf of the PCEP. So we're doing good. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So actually, yep, go ahead, co-chairs. You can introduce this section as well, and then we will ask our guests to share some information with us.
Okay. Oh, where did my slide?
Sorry, could we get the slides again?
Yeah.
And I think there's just one right here.
There we go. Okay. So in discussing codification, which, as the slide says, is just making PCEP a permanent ongoing part of city code and an ongoing community communication and engagement dynamic. One of the reasons we are bringing this up now is looking at how valuable this process is, how much progress we are making at this point, but how much work is still needed, and the fact that there is going to be some changes in city governance. And so we thought we want to capture the work that's been done. We want to capture the process that has been successful. And so it's time for us to once again look at codifying PCEP into city code.
Thanks, Celeste. And so I think tonight we just wanted to get sort of a preliminary understanding of how that process works at the city level, and what opportunities PCEP might have for giving input into that process. So kind of just giving a little preview into what might be unfolding if we were to undertake this effort. So I think we have Sarah Ames with us tonight, city attorney, and we know Stephanie is also here. So at this time, I think if Sarah could maybe speak a little bit about how the codification process might work.
Hi, Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns, Deputy City Attorney. Thank you for having me. There has been a long time commitment by the mayor's office to codify PCEP. In a couple of years ago, in fact, there was a drive to do it, and PCEP was working on revising the PCEP plan and then putting that forward as part of its codification efforts. Anyway, that didn't work. That didn't come to bear. But right now, if you want to codify PCEP, you do not have to go back and revisit the PCEP plan. You have a PCEP plan that's filed with the court. It's been approved by City Council. It is in effect. You guys all have read it. We can codify PCEP without worrying about that whole bundle of work. And it really can be a pretty simple process. I actually last year drafted a draft code for PCEP to codify PCEP. It's 1 page long because, as you probably understand, the code is the high level of the law, and you want to allow enough flexibility for individual groups to develop their plans within that. Some elements are covered by bylaws. So you really don't need a lot of code to define what, to get PCEP into code as a permanent part of the city government. So what would happen is I drafted this code on behalf of the mayor's office a while ago. I could bring that to Stephanie Howard, and I could bring it to a PCEP meeting, a subcommittee, the full committee, discuss it, kind of get some feedback, and then we could put it in an ordinance and get it done. This is not a very involved, long process. So with the mayor's support and a little bit of extra legwork and consultation with you, we can get this taken care of if it's a priority now for you all, which it sounds like it is.
Thank you, Sarah. Stephanie, did you want to add to any aspect of what Sarah mentioned?
Yeah, I think I just want to add that this really doesn't take, this is not a heavy lift for PCEP at all. So I think what we just would want to know is to get your feedback on the draft code and to ensure that this is reflective of what PCEP would like to see happen. You've heard from the mayor that he has always envisioned that PCEP would exist beyond the settlement agreement. And so I think I would just say I don't want to, Sarah and I would handle, and Dory, we would handle the coordination on the back end of getting, the ordinance to council. And of course, all of you would be invited to speak at that council session if you wanted to. And it would just be a matter of passing the ordinance. So we're more than happy to do it. And I just don't think it's going to require a whole lot on your end other than your feedback.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Celeste, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if Jared Hager would like to weigh in on this, if you have any comments.
Thank you, Celeste. Yeah, with my Department of Justice hat on, the decision to codify PCEP or not is the city's. It wasn't a requirement of the settlement agreement, and it isn't a requirement. That being said, the parties have always represented, that one of the values and the advantages of the PCEP structure vis-a-vis the COAB structure was that it could live beyond the life of the settlement agreement. It wasn't tied to the COCL, a creature of the settlement agreement. It wasn't, defined as just a body that existed for the settlement agreement. It's something bigger. And, the mayor made it one of his 18-point plan in the summer of 2020. Has always been very supportive. The PCEP at different times has shown different levels of interest in that. I think it's something bigger than the members. The body itself has, I think an interest in its continued existence to really reward and make more durable all of the hard work the volunteers are putting in and the staff are putting in. So, the Department of Justice surely supports the notion. We would not require it of the city or PCEP, but we are appreciative of you all taking it seriously and understanding the various interests at stake here. So thank you for giving it attention, and look forward to see what you guys decide.
Thank you, Jared. Celeste?
And just to add a little bit more background as to why we're looking for codification, as I mentioned, there's going to be a change in our governance structure, and the mayor is not seeking reelection, and he has been our I would say champion in many ways. I know maybe not perfect, but a champion regardless. And he's been through the life of this new iteration. And so, one of the things that we really appreciate that is mandated by the settlement agreement is the partnership with the mayor and the partnership with the police leadership. And those are two key things that we would like to see endure um, with regard to a relationship promoting community vision of community policing. And so that's one of the key reasons for seeking codification, so that we can maintain this dynamic of meeting and working together. Thank you all. Mm-hmm.
Do we have other PCEP members who have questions or comments? And then we'll also ask the public if there are any questions or comments.
I'm trying to raise my hand.
Go ahead, Pastor Weisner.
I'm just going to echo Celeste a little more, but in the historical point of view. The vision of those who have brought this settlement agreement and the working efforts of what we have here is an opportunity, I think, that we have always envisioned when they came in with the agreement. That strong presence of community and input. And I just really strongly agree that this is the right thing. I do know, even from the work that we had did with the Albino Ministerial Alliance at the very beginning, to form what is now called the Amici, have always seen and envisioned something like this. And so I know it goes way beyond, and hopefully, and appreciating the mayor's dreaming and the work of the city, as Stephanie have already echoed very clearly, strong support and not a hard lift. And I really appreciate that language.
Thank you, Pastor Weisner. Mr. Barnett? You may want to unmute yourself.
Okay, and now I'm unmuted.
There you go.
I'm always a little bit more slower than you young folks, since I'm 86 years old, and some of this technology is your world, not mine. So anyway, with that said, I'm an African-American man who's lived in Northeast Portland for over 40, probably close to 50 years. And I have always been a citizen activist and particularly focused on the issues that have affected the African-American and people of color issues. And I've seen many different iterations of a momentum, a positive momentum, and I've seen many setbacks. And I've gone through ups and downs, and I've attended and been involved with all the way from the early COCO, some of the very beginnings of the meetings that transpired as a result of the settlement agreement. And so I'm saying that as background and context to the comments that I'm about to make. And that is, in my political activity, in political movements and so forth that I've been involved in, it's always been things to note is that even though an idea may be good, strong, just, right, and everything, if one does not look over your shoulder at possible setbacks or attacks, it's a big mistake. And so that has to do with the question I'm about to ask. Not that I'm not concerned about it myself, but I'm thinking about who might raise this and have a disabling effect on the momentum to PCCEP being actually achieving continued support from the city and become, an ongoing operation. And that is this. The question is, two questions. One question is, somebody may raise the question about if that were to happen, what were to happen if also at the same time the police oversight committee that's being developed and going before council tomorrow, the next day anyway, soon, if both those organizations exist, where does the conflict occur? Where does the role, who has a jurisdiction, authority, influence, who has, can somebody who has not the good intent of the community at heart want to propose some kind of a false dichotomy, and whether you guys have given some thought to that, whether somebody might try to pit, oh, well, you got the you got the PCCEP and you got this other group, and they're not both necessary, and the city can't afford it, and it's too much money, and all kind of reasons for, and that person raising that may not care about either organization. They're just trying to, like Trump does all the time, find ways to create chaos and confusion and all that. So I'm just saying it's incumbent on your body to think about how to handle some kind of a movement, motion, effort, whatever, to undo or disrail what PCCEP has accomplished and what the Oversight Committee has accomplished. So that's my question, and I don't have the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. Celeste, did you want to respond to Mr. Barnett, or did you have a separate question?
No, actually, I wanted to give a real brief response. I think that is an excellent question. We have touched on it many times ourselves, speaking amongst each other and with our program manager, Dory, and with Samir. One of the challenges is that the PAC deals with oversight and PCCEP deals with community engagement. Now, they have areas where they touch and they have overlaid similar interests, but they are two different dynamics. And that community engagement part, with the goal of establishing a relationship with the police leadership and rank and file and with the mayor, I think is one of the key, and I mentioned it earlier, one of the key dynamics that we want to preserve. But I think we should always, regardless of whether we are successful in becoming codified or it is determined later for whatever reason we're not, we should always still look at the need for having those two separate dynamics and having a clear idea of how those two are necessary and when they touch and when they don't. I think that's our strength. Dory, is there anything you want to add to this? Because you have a slightly different outlook, being the city team, a city program manager, and being a city employee in trying to help implement this. And I think that Mr. Barnett brings up a really good question to help us crystallize our actions as we seek to elevate the public's voice.
No, I don't have much to add. Really insightful comments and really appreciate that input. I guess I would add that, I think we understand the differences between PCCEP and the Police Accountability Commission. It is true that the future board does not yet exist, and we don't entirely know what that will be. So that is maybe worth mentioning.
Thank you, Dory. Pastor Wiseman?
I was going to say again, great question and great response, Celeste, to Mr. Barnett's great wisdom at the table, and greatly appreciate those years that you have spent here and worked on behalf of our community, and especially those of people of color, Mr. Barnett. I noticed between the two, one through the IPR, the accountability, and then the examining of the actual misconduct. I think Celeste used a great word where we are in the language of community engagement and have great relationships working with the directives and the mayor's support behind us. And the police accountability has always been a part of where I think, if I remember it clearly, the teeth that CRC has always needed to have, the bite of investigations and things such as that. And so I see a little bit of difference in there, but I'm not sure if I'm even explaining it as clearly as I've seen the work that we have done before the settlement agreement and what we've done with Mr. Hector Lopez and that team who walked off the first time from the CRC that needed to really have a stronger power at the table.
Thank you, Pastor Wiseman. Any other comments or questions from the public? And so, Sarah, I have a question that might be able to help answer this question for you in respect to coding and codifying this program into the city and making sure that it doesn't conflict with other potential internal programs or agencies. Is that something that you can add to the coding language?
I think that's a really important point. And there are some questions about how to influence police bureau policies that could be seen as overlapping between the two. And so I think when I do bring the draft code language for PCCEP to PCCEP for your comment, I think it would be good to also have the charter language for the police. I'm trying to remind myself what they call it. Community-led oversight board. I'm wrong. It's accountability.
Yeah, if I could quickly expand on that. And again, there are a lot of details of the future system that have not yet been decided upon, as we kind of learned about earlier. But something that people in this meeting may not be super familiar with is that in the charter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but something that the future board is able to do is make policy recommendations to the PPB. That is in the charter, correct?
Yes, that is in the charter language. They have the authority to investigate, impose discipline, and to make policy recommendations to the police bureau. And if the police chief rejects their policy recommendations, they can then appeal, basically appeal that. They can bring those recommendations to the council for them to accept or reject, impose on PPB. So it's got some real teeth in there. Those policies are kind of more coming out of, I think, their view is going to be through the world of looking at police misconduct cases. That's their primary focus in imposing discipline. So I would guess that a lot of their policies will come, suggestions will come out of the cases that they hear and where policies failed or weren't clear enough or didn't, prohibit some kind of conduct clearly that they think should be prohibited clearly. I'm just projecting, but I think that was where they really wanted to have that policy authority put into the charter language. And you have a very different kind of way of developing policies and making recommendations about policies and practices, and we should get a monitor. You have a much broader kind of view of what kinds of recommendations you can make to the police chief and to the mayor as police commissioner. So you have kind of a, it's overlapping, distinct, and we can look at the charter language and any code language if we've gotten that far for the oversight board, and look at PCEP and make sure that we kind of, make sure that they aren't seen as redundant, because I see them very differently as you do.
That was great because it helped my view a little better too, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Stephanie.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. While we're talking about this important question about the interplay between, the new oversight board and codified PCEP and what that can look like, I do just want to point out one section for this group to consider that's in the code package being proposed and discussed tomorrow. And I can put a link in the chat, of course, but there are some recommendations from the Police Accountability Commission about making the new oversight board responsible for reviewing advisory bodies that make policy recommendations. And so I think while we're having this conversation, it's important for you all to maybe take a look at that. And if you have any, any thoughts or anything that weighs into your, what you want to communicate about it, feel free. I just thought while we're talking about it, this is a good thing for me just to make sure that you have all seen. I'll drop a link in the chat with exactly where to go.
Excellent. Excellent. I didn't even see that part.
Right. Thank you, Stephanie. Other comments or questions from PCEP members or the public? This is a really good discussion and preparation for an upcoming meeting. Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on. Dory, should we take a 5-minute break here and then close out, or should we just continue?
PCEP, are you feeling a break at this time? Yeah, let's take a 5-minute
Yes.
break. So we'll meet back here at 7:25. See you then.
Recording stopped.
And we can get started again.
Recording in progress.
All right. So as mentioned, our two community engagement co-chairs are not able to attend tonight. And they were going to take the lead on this section, but we're going to do our best without them and kind of put some pieces in place and kind of have a discussion about what's ahead for us. As you may or may not know, PCCEP kind of operates on the school year. So we are at the beginning of a new PCCEP year right now. And we are trying to put some pieces in place to kind of help make our work a little more to help us sort of anticipate, you know, what work we have coming up and what are our goals for, you know, this month, what do we have coming up the following month, and what else do we have time to fit in. So what we've laid out here is things that have been mentioned so far, in addition to some housekeeping things that we know we have coming up. And we just kind of wanted to talk about when members see these things fitting in the next couple of months and how we achieve these things. Let's see. So I'm not sure the best place to start with this.
Dory, do you have the calendar that you mentioned?
I do not. That was something that our members who aren't here had purview over. So that's sort of why we're kind of just gonna do what we can tonight and see where we get.
Yeah. Well, a suggestion based off the conversation that we had yesterday in planning for this piece, going down these different ideas and next steps, maybe we think about the amount of time it would take for us to do the task, and then maybe set it within a month that it would make sense to set that task in. So that's how I would recommend moving forward with what we have right now.
Cool. That makes sense to me. So PCCEP members, any particular thing you want to start with? Or should we just kind of go down the list here?
Move down the list, I believe. I'm kind of like you right now, is trying to piece it together for this without the absence of everyone there. But what it is like they say, it is. Yeah.
So context surveys recommendation. This is something that's been discussed in quite a few PCCEP meetings. We have a draft recommendation already put together. I think the thing the committee has not sort of decided on yet is whether you want to do more community engagement around that recommendation before finalizing it. So that's a decision that needs to be made. So does there need to be more community engagement on that? Or would you like to just submit it as is, or have a meeting to finalize it and then submit it? So that's kind of a decision on the table. If we maybe could talk about that.
Yeah. Oh, Celeste has her hand raised, so.
Why don't you go ahead, Leslie?
Yeah, I think for the context surveys especially, because we haven't finalized and voted on that recommendation, it would make sense to have another, or just like have the recommendation finalized and presented at a meeting, and then that way we can vote on it and make sure that, you know, everybody knows what's going in, since we do have to vote on it anyway to submit it.
And so on the subject of having a community engagement event around it, your stance is?
Well, I don't know that we need to have a community engagement in for the recommendation of having a contact survey. I think when it comes down to like, what questions are we going to put in there? What do we want to ask? What are the community? That is when I think we need more community engagement, is my opinion.
Makes sense. So the recommendation in your view could just be adopt this program.
Yeah.
And then in the recommendation, maybe saying
we will
more
work with the
engagement.
community in order to, you know, come together and create the survey, and, you know, what things were actually going to be asked as part of that contact survey. Yeah.
Okay. Celeste?
Well, I was thinking in terms of the fact that we have been getting pieces here and there over the years with regard to contact surveys. I think if, and I'm pretty sure that members of the committee are going back. I know, I think you're one of them, Leslie, compiling a list of what recommendations or documents or whatever we have done with regard to community concerns, whether they have resulted in a recommendation or not. So look at what we've got and present that maybe in a community engagement meeting so that the public can see what we have and see if it needs to be updated. But I will defer, you know, to what the chairs of the actual community engagement have in mind, and then also hear what comes out of the settlement and policy committee, because those are the two groups that are doing the work that's going to result in whatever recommendation we do bring forward.
So to be clear, with this one, there's already a draft recommendation.
Right. And I think Nathan was working on it, you know, and so I know, and I don't mean to speak for you, Nathan, but I do know that you do want to make sure we have adequate community engagement and community input on that. So I'm assuming then, since you're doing it, that you actually have gone back and looked at everything, and you're taking all of our former work and bringing it forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I guess what I'll say on this topic is there's a few things to point out. The form for recommendations for PCCEP has a community engagement section. So I don't think it makes sense to move forward without doing that community engagement, or we just have a recommendation that says we did not engage with the community on this topic, which is fine. But ideally, I think we would do that, and I think that's PCCEP practice to do that. The other thing I'll just say is that I think really strong recommendations and policies in general are put together by teams of people working together, bringing diverse perspectives together. And I wrote the draft PCCEP recommendation for contact surveys just to get the ball rolling, but I really want to make sure that that process is benefiting from input from people who aren't me, because I also wrote the TAC recommendation, and obviously that did benefit from the TAC member participation, but that's a more focused, less diverse group than PCCEP and all of the people that come to our meetings and our community engagement events. So, you know, I mean, we could move forward with contact surveys sort of unilaterally without further community engagement process, but I think I'd really prefer to see the full coming together of minds and perspectives and input before doing that. Does that all make sense? Is that clear?
Yes.
I guess, so I completely understand the community engagement aspect of it. And that's why I would say that we bring it, you know, we release it, give it plenty of time, have the community members be able to, once it's complete, because I do think you're right. If you're the only person that wrote it, it definitely, you know, we definitely maybe want to use that as a starting point. Not to say that, you know, you didn't do great work, because it looked great, but yeah, having like different perspectives there. But if we release it with enough time for it to be presented at a meeting, wouldn't we be able to get community input at that meeting and then decide, you know, if we can move forward with it as a recommendation? I mean, if we present it and then the community is like, this is outrageous, like we don't want to move forward with this, then that would definitely be feedback as well. I guess my question is like, what content of we want to do contact surveys is so like is so necessary or so like confusing. I definitely think when it comes to like longer topics or topics that need a lot more discussion, that having a more drawn out process makes sense. But when the basically the thesis or the goal or the point is like, we want to have a contact survey, I'm not sure that that content is so dense that it can't be decided fairly quickly and be put forth as a recommendation. If we haven't started talking about the if we're not talking about what it will actually contain.
Yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I think that all makes sense, and I agree with it. You know, in general, I tend to think it's a pretty straightforward, common sense thing to be doing. But I also didn't want to be, you know, abusing the process or anything like that. If we're comfortable moving forward with presenting this at a future PCEP meeting as a final draft, and then taking community feedback there, I think that's totally fine. And I'd be fully supportive of that. And whatever course of action that the chairs are comfortable with.
If it's helpful, I did want to respond to Nathan's comment about the PCEP recommendation form. That form was created by the sort of past iteration of PCEP members, the one before this one, cohort, I guess you could say. So it's not like a, you know, by no means like a formal thing that you're required to use. It's, you know, a product of a past cohort of committee members. My understanding of the boxes at the end about, you know, how was community input collected, how does this recommendation serve certain groups type of thing, I think it's flexible in terms of how the input is gathered. And I think it can absolutely include what you all are discussing, which is input gathered at a PCEP meeting, just a standard PCEP meeting. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, Dory. Pastor Wisener.
Thank you, Dory, for that content as well. And I kind of understand Nathan's sentiment, because I think that we have worked real hard to make sure we all are accountable and all are on the areas of working toward that single mindset. And again, with Leslie's recommendation and suggestion, it makes very much sense, as Nathan has already said as well. And I think that I agree with moving in that direction as well too.
Great. So it sounds like for the contact survey recommendation, the decision is that that can be resolved in a future full committee meeting where the text is, you know, well, where we circulate that draft to the public via the channels we normally do, and then the committee revises it collectively, we hear public input, and then we have a formal vote. Leslie?
Yeah, and I think to add to that, kind of speaking to Nathan's point earlier, if a couple of PCEP members commit to provide feedback or comments or be even part of a work group for a couple meetings, just to make sure that there's some collaboration in that recommendation. I think that I just didn't want to miss that being added.
Cool. Let's get the slides again, please.
And with that context of maybe a couple meetings of preparation beforehand and then going to a full committee meeting, is there an idea of when you all would like to do this? Like what months?
How many more meetings do we have for the year? And in what committee? Would it be full committee or subcommittee?
So to pass a recommendation, it does need to be a full committee. So we have in the calendar year, we have just what, 3 left, right?
Just 3, and that is assuming that we don't have any holiday issues.
Yeah, December December 20th, we may or may not have a meeting to accommodate our volunteers. So or it may be earlier in the month, we'll see.
What I would ideally like to see happen, and again, I can't, like I said before, I don't want to commit us to this because the chairs are not here, but the community engagement committee might be an ideal place to capture some input on it. And we could try something like posting our recommendation and asking for email or written input as well. And so that's something we can consider, we can put on the table for that. And I'm just suggesting that because when we get down to the next topic, which is consent searches, that's been a pet project of mine. And so those were things that I was going to suggest as ways of getting input in addition to any community meeting. So I'm looking at all of these topics we have in the next 2 categories, or these 2 categories, ideas and then this recommendation, that those are 4 different topics that don't necessarily have a lot of overlap. So if we only have 3 potential meetings in which to talk about this, and we have 4 topics here, we had to figure out perhaps a new way. Okay, I see you, Dory. Go ahead.
No, we're talking about filling in. So again, PCCEP operates on kind of the school calendar year.
Right.
So taking advantage of being at the beginning of our new PCCEP year, we're talking the whole next year, right?
Oh, okay. I can rest.
And
I was getting a little anxious there for a moment.
We're gonna do way more than this next year, but we're kind of just starting to be like, okay, let's puzzle out, like, where do we want to do some of this stuff? So, and we're at different steps with all of these things. Like contact surveys, we could move on pretty quickly. We've already had many meetings about it. We have gotten a lot of input about it.
Yes, we have.
Meetings. Consent searches, brand new, right? We're at step 0 with that. These are ideas that you all have discussed, but would need to be planned. And then with PCCEP affairs, some of these, again, different kind of stages of the game. Some of these we're committed to having at certain times. For example, elections, we're committed to having them in November. So we can say for certain that at our full committee meeting in November, we will have elections, right? You know, so we're kind of just trying to start helping members think about, okay, when can we accomplish some of this work? When does it make sense for you? That kind of thing.
And I'll just add, as we think about, go down this list and think about things, we're talking about, the number of meetings we might need and how much more work each topic is needed. Thinking about the amount of time it would take for us to complete that particular bullet point, and then thinking about where on the calendar we want to place it. And it doesn't have to be a permanent thing. I do appreciate, Celeste, you're talking about the other co-chairs of the other subcommittees and the importance of their input. But if we could begin to just kind of pencil in some space around these different bullet points, it just begins us to move in a direction with our calendaring. Are there any other questions or comments?
What's our next step, Dory?
With regards to
penciling it in.
Which one?
I think yes.
Contact surveys. Should we just say this is October, we're gonna do it in November, or? I mean, September, we're gonna do it in October, sorry.
Yes, I think that is a step. Yeah, I think that that makes sense. Because of the work that's already put in on that subject. That's a commitment that makes sense to me. With the first community engagement event on the list, that's something that maybe might be attainable in the month of November. If that is something that the committee wants to focus on for kind of the last big community engagement event of the year. Since we already began our work on the stops data. Those might be some suggestions I would have in terms of scheduling this out. Having that sort of event and doing that sort of work might also inform a recommendation on consent searches.
And I'm just helping me again because I got trapped. I'm kind of moved a little place here. It can, of course, be suggested tonight, but we can also it's not locked, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Good.
Not at all. Yeah. This is just, there are so few opportunities that we have as a full committee to kind of visualize and look at the work ahead. That is sort of the effort here. Because so many of you share such good ideas all the time. And, to help realize those things collectively as a group, I think there's something to be said for kind of coming together and saying, okay, here are our goals, here's what we've said. Yeah. Leslie?
So it seems like we're starting to go a little bit out of order, and that's totally okay. So that's why I'm thinking I want to bring up the finishing the bylaws before we do elections, because there are a few things in the bylaws that dictate, like roles and what roles things can people can hold and stuff like that. So I definitely want the finishing the bylaws to be in the near future.
That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
So that would be maybe October.
Yes, I'm in agreement with that.
Yeah, that's that it would have to be, because according to your bylaws that are currently in place, we are committed to having those elections in November.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really helpful to think about. So we can maybe figure out where that fits in now that we have said, okay, bylaws November for sure. Maybe contact survey recommendation, or sorry, October for sure. Maybe contact survey recommendation in October as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
And if I also may, the building out policy arm and director review and all of that, I think would make sense to do after we have the new members, obviously, and elections and stuff like that, and people feel a little bit more onboarded. So I don't know what the time sensitivity is on that. But depending on what the onboarding plan is for the new members, kind of aligning it towards the end of that so that, we can get them, because I know, like, especially in the very beginning when I joined, it was like I was trying to dive into things, but also trying to absorb things. So I was joining committees, but not really sure of like what I was doing at the same time.
For sure. That's really good input as well.
I think,
yeah.
So I look at December for that, would you say? Because I like that ideal too.
I think my recommendation for December would be for you as volunteers to commit to not much. So I think December would be like, I would say December on the calendar is like a loose ends month, like housekeeping, loose ends, what do we need to take care of kind of month, but not starting anything new month.
take this as the oldest seated member of PCEP. Yes, that's exactly what we want to do.
And if there's Byron. Byron, go ahead.
I follow the leads of the seniors.
Co-chairs, Pastor Wisner and Celeste, is it possible maybe we can have one of these December meetings in person down at City Hall, maybe? Just a suggestion.
I think that would be a great idea. All we need to do is figure out the logistics.
That's a good point as well. I think as we map this out, and we will do we will this is a helpful initial conversation about this for sure, but as we kind of more concretely lay this down, we can also decide like which one of these should be in person, right? Like which meetings should be virtual and which should be maybe out in the community in person, etc. That's a great point too.
Okay.
Dory is hoping for or aiming for onboarding to be done by December. Is that a realistic goal?
I mean, formally, yes, it will be completed by then. And I think in terms of like becoming comfortable with the work and stuff, I think that's a realistic goal. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful, because I was thinking that if that's possible, then December, since it's open, that can be the loose ends that we tie up, anything around onboarding or anything that was left over from any meeting. And then we can move into January, maybe focusing on the building out the policy arm.
That makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. So we've addressed everything in the PCEP affairs column. I think we've even committed them to timeframes. With the community engagement events, PCEP members in attendance, do you feel that November might be realistic for a community engagement event around the stops data? This, I think, was shared with you via email, the idea around this.
I would be in agreement with that. I also really like the idea of bringing that event to the community and having it in a location where we haven't historically had it. Maybe even not the office that or like the downtown location that we go to, like completely in a different place. Wondering if, like a church or something, that has like a wide thing. But I think we heard loud and clear the last time that we were in person that we need to be in front of other people, different areas of the city.
Totally. Yeah, one of the ideas suggested for that one, I think, was to have it in East Precinct where the majority of stops are made. So yeah, absolutely something that could be a good opportunity to kind of deliver on that request. Okay, and then what about this idea that came out of the recent community engagement subcommittee meeting, the brain injury summit?
Dory, I was thinking like February would be a good time to have this summit. Get past the holidays, get past vacation, everybody come back. Yes, I was thinking more in mid-February, maybe late February would be a good time for that.
Yeah, maybe February or maybe March, I was thinking would be realistic for that one, giving us, yeah, exactly, coming off the holidays, having some planning time and coordinating with guests for that event as well. I think that is key for this event is coordinating with all of those people who we would want to attend. So yeah, maybe early spring kind of time.
March, April.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
March was what I was thinking. Late
March,
March. Yeah, that would be my vote as well. I definitely would want to have it in like the first 3 months of the year, but looking at everything and like the planning time that it would take, especially with what we're planning or what we had been discussing that we're planning, March.
Cool. And
would
then
be my vote.
And then the last sort of thing would be this consent searches piece. So like recommendation, that one might be a little hazier, because we haven't done any work on this yet, right?
Well, I'm sorry, I should have raised my hand.
Oh no, go ahead, Celeste. I know you actually have done work on this, just not when most of us were here.
Yeah.
Byron was probably here.
One of my concerns is that we look at two actions coming out of that. One is having some type of presentation where we do community education. We have people for whom this is their bailiwick. They do studies on it. They do presentations on it. Come and make a presentation. And then a second thing is to look if a recommendation is in order. So these are two separate things. They're related by the title and what the actual subject is, but the actions themselves are different. And one is not necessarily contingent upon the other, but during a education session, we can gather input. We can solicit input by, hard copy surveys or whatever.
Celeste, correct me if I'm wrong. Is the idea of the first community engagement event here sort of in line with that? Or could it be?
It could be. It could be. I'm trying to figure out how to make it work because I bugged you a lot this summer. I wanted to do something back in the spring of this year, coming into the summer for youth, to make sure youth and drivers were aware of it because we typically drive more in the summer. But to make it fit with how we're able to get things done, yes. long answer. Yes.
I think in general, what you suggest just now is a really great way for, and you already have been, but for PCCEP to be thinking about the community engagement events and recommendations sort of hand in hand with one another.
Yes.
To me, this proposed event and that proposed recommendation seem like they could be symbiotic. And since neither of them have been developed yet, I might suggest that they be developed with that in mind.
That works.
And Barb noted in the chat that March is Brain Injury Awareness Month.
Oh, that's right.
Which is kind of neat. Okay, so I think we've addressed everything on here. As a next step, I will sort of map this out, like kind of give us a draft calendar. And then that'll also show us where we have space for other things that may come up or other ideas, and sort of also let us know like what's realistic to fit in terms of your workload and what you're able to commit to, and then manage your time. Like, well, we know we want to get these things done, or whatever. So yeah, I think that's what we're thinking in terms of moving forward. Anything else we should include as we're kind of putting together a draft for the next couple months?
A quick question for the consent searches, and particularly the first part of getting someone to come in and speak. Is there a particular month that you all want to kind of aim for to begin that process?
Could you repeat? Did you say the brain injury summit, Afraid? Was
Uh,
that what?
no, the consent searches and having
Oh,
somebody come in to speak.
Was that
I
considered?
want to try to check in with the chairs of the committee before this is one where I really want to, because I mean, granted, is something that any one of us could arrange. I really would feel more comfortable if I had them here, because I don't want to go over their heads and try to organize something separate that's outside of their plan. I don't know if they shared with us everything that they have on their calendars yet. So I mean, it's a very fair question. I'm at odds. I'm not quite sure how to answer it with them not here.
Pastor Weisner, were you going to say something?
I was, but I kind of agree with Celeste not knowing the calendar, because I was looking at this still ideal of being able to be moved away if it's necessarily not locked in.
That's accurate.
And so, but I have to respect the thought of what that calendar looks like, and the absence is. I would stay with where Celeste is at for me.
We're not committing any particular subcommittee to this.
Host it. Well,
yeah.
then I see November, because Celeste, you know, this has really been on in the heart of this collective body. And I think now that we came out throughout this year, that is something I would propose to be moved into in November.
Leslie?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that we should keep in mind and take into account what the community engagement subcommittee is working on, and that is saying that being a member of that subcommittee. But I did want to make sure to note that, part of our goal as that subcommittee is to support the work that we decide on as a full committee. And if we decide in this meeting, which is all of the members, that that's what's important, that would help the engagement subcommittee decide on priorities. And so, I just wanted to give that perspective as well.
Ms. Celeste, did you want to respond to the suggestion of November?
Well,
I think the question,
go ahead, Dora.
was to Leslie, right?
Yeah, I here's the thing, folks. I started doing some work with this when I started doing STOPS data presentations in the Racial Equity Subcommittee a way ago. I want to continue that. This is one of my passions, but I am mindful of, like I said, what else is coming along. There's a lot of work that Dory and I can do on the ground that we can start, and then I can bring that to the committee, and then we can figure out where to plug it in. I don't want to be presumptuous. I don't want to be overbearing with my position as chair. I want to be respectful of the process. So what I would say is, at the upcoming community engagement meeting, this is something we can calendarize, and I can find out how the community engagement committee wants to bring this forward to the whole steering committee. Does that make sense?
It does.
Equitable. That seems equitable to everybody.
It does. One thing I would say is you're not overbearing, not Celeste.
but if that will work, because this gives me a chance. I mean, I'm still doing some research. I'm still trying to pull stuff out of the IMLCC. Did I say that right, Dory? Presentation, because I found data in that presentation that is very relevant to not only the work we're doing overall, but specifically to STOPS data and consent searches. And so I want to finish my research. Then I'll take it to Dory. Then she'll let me know what some next steps are. And maybe November, we could pencil in a possible.
If it helps.
Right. Yeah.
If it helps, I think we may be circling around or repeating ourselves slightly, because I think we're in agreement that this community engagement event, I don't have the mouse, but the first community engagement event would probably have a lot to do with consent searches. So it is sort of implied that if that were to happen in November, there would be prep work necessary for us to be briefed on that and just for us to learn more about that, etc. Because there was agreement that this could be developed with a consent search recommendation in mind. So it's the question is sort of, I think, already sort of implicitly answered if there is agreement that this first event would take place sometime in November.
Good.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
And Dory, the only other thing I would add is adding onboarding to the bullet points underneath the PCCEP affairs. We talked about it and named when we'd like to finish that, and so just adding that to the list.
That's good.
Alrighty. Well, obviously this conversation will be ongoing, but this is a really good framework to begin to lay out. So I'm glad we did this. But if there are no more sort of comments or things to resolve here, I think we can move into open public comment.
Dory, I just want to address a couple questions from Barb on the chat. One of them was, and I'm assuming this has to do with elections. Are you going to have a new committee chair in November? So that's I'm assuming has to do with the elections in November with PCCEP members. And then she has another question. I think she's trying to understand what the IMLCC is. I think she just needed some clarity. We tend to use acronyms and not always explain what those acronyms mean.
Yep. I can answer both of those. We are going to have elections in November. That's the answer to that. So I can't speak to whether we'll have new full committee chairs or new subcommittee chairs, but we elect new positions for all of PCCEP's seated leadership on an annual basis. So that's the answer to number one. Number two is actually, I can put it, I'll write this in the chat after I say it. It's actually IMLLC, and that stands for Independent Monitor LLC, which is just like limited liability corporation, like business, you know. And they are the people who conducted that independent review of PPB's response to the 2020 protests as a provision of the settlement agreement. You may remember that PCCEP posted one of their events last fall. And that's it. So at this time, I think we can move into open public comment. So anyone in attendance, including PCCEP members, if you have more to share, but we'll prioritize members of the public. Please raise your hands on the Zoom, and we would love to hear anything you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, Mr. Barnett's already in the queue. Go ahead, Mr. Barnett.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for recognizing me. I appreciate that. Part of the discussion that's been going on for during this period had to do with a comment about having a different location for the next general meeting, and one of the kind of assertions or recommendation was that to consider some community location, and that community location might be the North Precinct. Me myself, and I'm not alone at all, would have some reservations about having a PCEP meeting in a police facility. There are a lot of people, ordinary people, not necessarily anybody that's hypersensitive, but they just, if they're from the Black community or any of the communities of color, just have a little unease about meeting in a police precinct. I mean, so I just say, just if that's going to have serious consideration, I wish you'd think about that and talk among yourselves about the idea about how pros and cons on that particular kind of idea, because there's a lot of other community spaces where you could have a very good meeting, and I assume or more than assume that even the idea about having a meeting in the community is that you're trying to welcome local folks to attend, and if their sensibility is such that would just kind of like make them feel, oh no, I really want to attend that, but I'm not going to no police to bring sick, for whatever reason, whatever the reason is. So anyway, I just suggest if you're going to give that some thought, give it some thought.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barnett. That's an excellent point. Yeah, and there's a lot of people who have uneasiness going into precinct for any type of meeting. So I'm sure that the committee is going to consider other options. And I have both Dory and Chair Weisner who want to make a comment on that.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I was unclear. PCEP will never host a meeting in one of the police precinct buildings because of exactly what you expressed. The committee is in full agreement with you, and our goal for going out into the community is we could not agree more with everything that you said. When I said East Precinct, what I meant was I can send the map in the chat, but the city of Portland is divided into geographic areas that are precincts. Like I think I live in, which precinct do I live in? I should know this. But we all live in these precincts, right? And so that is the idea. That's what I meant, was we would have it in the geographic location of, I live in Central Precinct, yes.
Yes.
I couldn't think of the word central. So yeah, we will have it in the geographical area where East Precinct is. Does that make sense? Because we want to reach people.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry, I was unclear, because that is it's commonly, those phrases are used interchangeably. Yeah, and I really appreciate your feedback tonight.
Thank you for that clarification, Dory. I think it's good for people to know that Portland is broken up into precincts. Some cities are broken up into zones, and some cities are broken up into regions. So it's good to have that language clarity. Pastor Weisner, did you have an additional comment to add to that, or did you have a different comment or question?
No, I was just going to clarify what Dory has said, but Mr. Barnett, I am going to be very respectful, and I hope we all know he's been here 46 years to know precincts, and his understanding of how that it was located in the overheard conversation police as what we are trying to keep. But great respect, great response, and Mr. Burnett, spot on as always.
Yes, he has great feedback. I also agree. I see no hands up, but I do see Dr. Elizabeth Allen on the chat. She has a question or comment. Does November election make this meeting a lame duck situation? Dory shaking her head no. Do you want to expand on that, Dory?
I'm not sure what there is to expand upon. The answer is no. Our chairs are still very much effective and have as much agency and influence as they ever do. And they are
up until we are unelected or reelected.
Yeah, and they also are you know, able to run again as chairs if they so wish. So.
Thanks, Dory. Dr. Elizabeth Allen, I see you got on the camera. Did you want to expand your question, or did you have another question?
Well, I don't have any sense of other groups of people that are other like powers, other groups that are fomenting other ideas under the present administration and would be competition. I don't have any sense of that. But on the other hand, are we not setting out a calendar that other people could conceivably have to carry out?
Dory, did you want to take on that question?
I think that's an inevitable potential part of any organization that has leadership change built into it. And if that happens to be the case, I am very confident that the PCCEP members who are continuing on and the PCCEP members that we onboard who are committed to this mission will, you know, dedicate themselves to the work that they signed up to do. But yes, it can certainly always be a challenge around these transitional periods, which include onboarding, right? Onboarding is always a challenge because people are coming into new work that, you know, they're learning the whole process and they're learning what work is in progress. So always a challenge, but I believe that our members are certainly up for it.
Thank you.
All right. If I still have a moment.
You do.
I thought that I put it in the chat that the question of consent searches was the perfect way to distinguish between what PCCEP does and what the new Accountability Commission might do. They would never do what PCCEP is preparing to do regarding consent searches. That is not their bailiwick.
Exactly.
If there is gathering of data, if there is a new suggested policy, if that policy becomes regulation, and if the regulation is not actually accomplished, then they might have something to do with the fact that it wasn't accomplished. How does that sound, Dory?
The Future Oversight Board is not my area of expertise, so I don't have much to add. Yeah, but yeah, I appreciate your comment.
Thank you so much. We have Celeste. Go ahead, Celeste.
Just as kind of an answer to you, Dr. Allen. The advantage that PCCEP, well, one advantage is that we do not make recommendations solely based on performance issues. And we have the flexibility of addressing emerging challenges or issues. And so that is another reason why we're looking at codification. The fact that we were able to address the gunshot detection technology is not something that the PAC would address, because again, as you so wisely pointed out, it arises out of oversight, out of performance reviews and the such. Whereas we look at how police actions, directives, et cetera, impact the community and try to bring forth enough information to get an informed commentary from the public, and then use that if a remedial recommendation should come forward. So yes. Oh, let me take my hand down.
Thank you, Celeste. I don't see other hands up. But I do see a message from Kate Saddle. She says, I'm extremely excited for the stops and consent searches work ahead. Thank you, as always, for your leadership and for being so welcoming. Thank you so much, Kate. Appreciate your comment.
Thank you.
I was just going to mention also Sarah Ains' comment earlier. And thank you again, Teresa, for being efficient in the areas of the chat. Don't know if you want to read her comment.
Yeah, I'll look for it. Unless you have it up. Let's see if I can find it, Sarah.
Approximately 7:31 p.m. is the timestamp, if that helps.
Okay.
Hi, this is Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
I saw a bit of like difficulty in the chat getting the link to the Police Accountability Commission's proposed code recommendations, and particularly the pieces where they discuss their interactions with other groups, including PCCEP, who might be performing some police oversight. So I just posted the actual language in their proposed code, sections E and F. And the first E, I'll summarize really quickly. Other city advisory groups related to police and policing whose functions incorporate officer accountability or policy recommendations, you all, including PCCEP, clearly, you may independently and voluntarily seek to fold yourselves into the new oversight board that they are creating, the accountability board. And then F says, no sooner than 2 years after the board begins receiving complaints, it on its own may undertake a review of all the advisory groups related to oversight of police and policing, and talking with the volunteers, and then kind of may make recommendations to the mayor or city council about how the different aspects will function or cease to function, and maybe winding down some of the current oversight systems. So they have proposed to put in code that groups like PCCEP could voluntarily merge with them, or within 2 years, the new board would have a conversation with folks on PCCEP and others, and then make some recommendations about how to possibly merge some of them into the new oversight board. So I think that's not too unfair a summary of what those would do, but it's just they did come out, and I think some of you were aware of this. Initially, one of their subcommittees in their discussion said, we should just fold them in. They got a lot of pushback from that, and agreed that they were not going to be pursuing that right away, and that they would, leave that conversation for the board to have at a later date, which is what their recommendation is here. So,
yeah, if I could add something here, I don't want PCCEP members to get the impression that this is sort of antagonistic towards PCCEP or targeting PCCEP, because it's worth noting that this might feel very specific to PCCEP, but there are something like 15 or so police related advisory boards in the city of Portland. So this applies pretty broadly. That's always it's always like a crazy number, but it is a lot of advisory boards that deal with policing in this city. And then also just bearing in mind again that this is proposed code that has to go through a lot of steps, right? So just wanted to note those two things.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Dory. I think it is really important to acknowledge. I would even, just to be clear, Dory, if PCCEP is cauterized, and Sarah can probably respond to that, before the other group gets formed, then I'm assuming that would not be an issue then necessarily, because it wouldn't be a standalone program. It would be institutionalized with the city.
Yeah, PCCEP being codified, particularly in a world where the settlement agreement is no longer, is resolved, right? That's sort of uncharted territory. Codification and budgeting are different processes, right? So we don't the future is uncertain, right? I can't speak exactly to all of these components and how it would fit in with the future oversight board that is being created. There are certainly areas where there could be some overlap. It could influence, have implications for codification, but I don't really know, right? I'm not an expert on these things. So that's a long way of saying I'm not completely sure if I can answer that question, but sort of.
That's fair.
It was a bad answer.
Pastor Weisner.
Good answer, Dory. One of my mentors, Dr. Haynes, used a similar concept that helps me sometimes. Is the United States military have different branches, but have one directed goal, and we are operating in the areas of those different branches with the goal that it is accountability. So maybe that kind of helped.
Thank you, Pastor Weisner. Dory's shaking her head, yes. Okay, I don't see any other hands up or comments other than Barb saying thank you, way easier than the whole thing. She was referring to Sarah.
Sarah.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah's.
Oh, I just wanted to say, to that last thing, I told you that it would not take much to get you into code. We have to propose it, get it to council, get them to vote. It would be a similar process to unwind that, right? I mean, to, have the code redefine what PCCEP is. But once something's in code, it has a certain momentum, right? Like changing something that's already in code is harder than not. The other piece is, of course, the other vote that counts, and Dory's well aware of this, is every year they vote on a budget. And whether you're in code or not, you have to get that vote too. So, continue value to the city that's worth the budget that you receive is the best way to, really ensure PCCEP's future. And I think in this last year, you guys have shown your value and continue to show your value to the city to be this forum of community engagement with the policing, amplifying the voices of community members, speaking truth to power. And I think there have been a number of conversations that couldn't have happened without PCCEP being the forum for that. And so I think that's, beyond codification, beyond, any kind of momentary politics, proving your ongoing worth by doing good work is the best guarantee that, no matter whether the council changes, the structure of city changes, that's your best bet to permanence. So, and you're doing it. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So Dory, should you go to the last slide?
Yep, let's close out right on time. So, well, what's really next is it sounds like our co-chairs will be giving testimony at the council meeting tomorrow. So that is also what's next in support of the Police Accountability Commission. But then the next PCCEP meeting we have coming up is Wednesday, October 4th, and that is a subcommittee meeting. Also, what's next is a whole lot of onboarding and welcoming our new members, which we're so excited about. Yeah, and you'll see them publicly next month. So with that, thank you everyone for a really productive meeting, lots of wide-ranging discussion, and lots of great groundwork laid. Thank you to all of our members and all of our contributors and our facilitators and accessibility support for your contributions. And with that, the time is 8:30 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all for attending. Thank
Recording
you, City
stopped.
Partners.